2 truffle turkeys, Garrigou? Yes, your reverence. 2 magnificent turkeys stuffed with truffles. Jesu Maria, how I do love truffles. Give me my surplus. Quickly, Garrigou. And what else did you see in the kitchen besides the turkeys? All sorts of good things. Since midday they've been plucking pheasants, larks, grouse, and there's eels, carp, trout from the pond. How big? The trout, Garrigou. As big as that, your reverence. Enormous. Heavens, I almost see them. Have you put the wine in the altar cruets? Yes, your reverence, but it doesn't compare with what you'll be drinking soon after Mass. You should see the dining room at the chateau. Never will there be a supper like it. The Marquis has invited all the nobility of the neighborhood. You are fortunate to be among them, reverence. Those truffles. Come now, my son, let us guard ourselves against the sin of gluttony, especially on the eve of the Nativity. Off with you quickly, light the candles and ring the bell for the first Mass. It is nearly midnight, and we mustn't be late. This conversation took place one Christmas Eve in the year of grace 1600 and something between the Reverend Father Balaguer, chaplain to the Lords of Trinquelage, and his little clerk Garrigou. The devil, on that very evening, had assumed the nondescript features of the young sacristan to lead the Reverend Father into temptation and the terrible sin of gluttony. The Reverend Father was hastening to clothe himself, and already troubled by all these gastronomic descriptions, he was repeating to himself as he dressed, "Roast turkeys, golden carp, trout as big as that." Outside the night wind was blowing. The families of the tenant farmers were coming to hear midnight mass at the chateau. In spite of the hour and the cold, all these good folk walked cheerfully, sustained by the thought that when they came out from mass there would be tables laid for them down in the kitchens, as there were every year. At the very summit of the slope rose the destination, the chateau. To reach the chapel, it was necessary to cross the outer courtyard, brightly lit by torches and the blazing kitchen fires. All around could be heard the sounds of preparation for the feast, and a warm vapour which smelt of roast meat and potent herbs made noble and peasant alike say, "What a fine Christmas supper we are going to have after Mass." Midnight Mass begins. In the chapel all the candles are lit. And the people, the costumes, the Lord of Trinquelage, the invited nobility, the Dowager Marchioness in her brocade, young ladies in the latest fashions. Further back, in black, the bailiff and scrivener strike solemn notes among the gaudy silks. The grooms, stewards, the fat housekeeper, and further back on the benches are servants, maids, and tenants with their families. At the door are the scullions, who slip in and out between sauces to snatch a little of the atmosphere of the mess, and to bring the smell of supper into the church. Is it the sight of the scullions' little caps which distracts the priest? Might it not be Garrigou's little bell, that mocking little bell which shakes at the foot of the altar with such infernal haste and seems to keep saying, let's hurry, the sooner we finish, the sooner we'll be at supper." Each time this devilish little bell rings, the chaplain forgets his mass and thinks only of supper. He sees scurrying cooks, stoves blazing, steam escaping from half-open lids, and 2 magnificent turkeys bursting with truffles. It seems to Father Balaguer that all these dishes are served before him on the embroidered altar cloth, and once or twice, instead of Dominus vobiscum, he catches himself saying, "Benedicite." Apart from this, the worthy man recites his office most conscientiously, and all goes well until the end of the first Mass, for, as you know, the same priest must celebrate 3 consecutive Masses on Christmas Day. "One over, Garrigou, the bell!" So the second Mass begins, and with it begins also the sin of Father Balaguer. "Quick, let's hurry!" Garrigou's little bell cries to him in its shrill little voice, and this time The unfortunate priest abandons himself on the missal and devours the pages with the avidity of his overstimulated appetite. Frantically, he kneels, rises, makes vague signs of the cross, cuts short all his gestures to finish the sooner. It is between his clerk and himself who will jabber the quicker. At this place a low mass is quickly got out of the way. 2 over. So, the third mass begins. But alas, the nearer supper approaches, the more the unfortunate Balaguer is seized by a gluttonous madness of impatience. He sees distinctly the turkeys, the wines, and shaking itself madly, the little belly shrieking at him, "Quick, quick, be more quick!" But how can he go more quickly? His lips are scarcely moving. He is no longer pronouncing the words, unless he cheats God completely and omits part of the Mass. And that is exactly what the wretched man does, skipping 1 verse, then 2. The epistle is cut short. He skims through the gospel, passes over the creed, and by leaps and bounds hurls himself into eternal damnation, followed by the infamous Garrigou, who turns pages 2 at a time and shakes that little bell quicker and quicker. The startled congregation are a sight to behold. Obliged to join in such a mass, some stand as others kneel, or sit when others rise. Every part of this extraordinary service results in a confused variety of postures. But these worthy folk are themselves thinking of supper, and are not sorry the mass is going at top speed. And when Father Balaguer shouts, "Ite, missa est," the whole chapel replies with a Deo gratias, so merry and lively you would have thought they were already at table responding to the first toast. 5 minutes later, the nobles take their seats in the great hall, the chaplain in the midst of them. The chateau reverberates with songs, laughter, and uproar, and the venerable Father Balaguer plunges his fork into the grouse, drowning remorse for his sin under floods of wine and rich meat gravy. The unfortunate holy man drank so much and ate so much, he died of a stroke that night, without even having time to repent. In the morning he arrived in heaven, still in a stupor after the night's feasting, unready for such a reception. "Get out of my sight, you wicked Christian," the sovereign judge, master of us all, said to him. "Your lapse from virtue is so great it outweighs all the goodness of your life. You stole from me a midnight mass, and you will pay it back 300-fold. You will not enter paradise until you have celebrated 300 Christmas masses in your own chapel, and in the presence of all those who sinned with you and by your fault." Such, in truth, is the legend of Father Balaguer. Today the chateau no longer exists, but the chapel still stands, overgrown with weeds and with nests in the recesses of windows from which the coloured glass has long since gone. Yet it is said that at Christmas every year a supernatural light hovers among these ruins, and that peasants going to mass in the church since built below see the chapel lit with invisible candles which burn in the open air even in wind and snow. On the path leading up they see lights flickering, faint shadows moving, voices whispering as the long-dead nobles and servants and farmers make their way to Mass. And if you are brave enough to look through the broken door of the chapel, you will see these people arranged in rows as if the ancient benches were still there. At the far end, a little man is kneeling in the center of the chancel, shaking despairingly a little soundless bell, while a priest clothed in old gold moves back and forth before the altar, reciting prayers no word of which can be heard. It is most surely Father Balaguer saying his third low mass.